Hey everyone, welcome back to the Sacred Souls podcast. I'm here today with my good friend Viri, and she is a licensed therapist and she does Reiki and energy healing, and I'm just so happy to have her here. Thank you for being
Thank,
here.
thank you for having me. I'm very excited to just connect and talk about parts of our stories that
I
are very in
know.
sync.
Exactly. So,
hmm
as I've mentioned previously on social media and in the episode I just did before this, I talked about my mushroom journey, and we had been talking together, and it turns out that she had an interesting experience in her mom's womb. And so we
hmm
wanted to discuss it because when I found out about just how powerful the womb was with my journey, I
Um,
was just I just really felt like other people had gone through something similar, maybe, and I wanted to see how it affected
mhm.
them. And so I feel like you just have a really interesting story that can tie into this, and it's just such a good discussion for people to hear.
Yes. And I didn't realize how powerful this part of my life actually impacted my nervous system, impacted my social emotional, just the ability of me feeling safe in my body. So when my mother was pregnant of me, she had a car accident. I think she was about 7 months pregnant, and she had a car accident where her belly hit the dashboard of the car, and after that, she got medically checked, medically cleared, and she was on bed rest. She was high risk, and in that process, obviously I'm in her belly, right? And after that, um, when I was born, and I hear a lot of stories about when I was born and how I reacted after the car accident from like my mother, from um, my aunts, and my siblings. And they would always say how I was such a crybaby, how I would cry a lot, and how every single time I would go into a car, from the moment that they left the destination and they got to their next destination, I wouldn't stop crying. And that obviously is how babies communicate, right? Um, and my mom, with obviously the very limited knowledge of her own emotional capabilities, right? Capacity and what she knows, she had no idea. She had no idea how to help me. And obviously, there is a lot of anxious attachment there in the process. And that really impacted my life without even knowing it throughout my whole life. And once I started doing a lot of um, as wound root chakra work, is me getting really deep into my story and how, like, where this stemmed from, and just really remembering, essentially remembering parts of people's narratives and letting me know, and knowing how my mom's pregnancy and also her own mental health really impacted mine, right? Even before I was born. So that happened right after. And then also when I was 1 years old, I'll share this part too, because I feel like it was just a lot of trauma in the first 2 years of my life. When I was 1 years old, I had my grandmother's heart medication. I thought they were candy, and I was able to open the little jar, and I had them, and I drank her medication. And my parents didn't know that I had drank them until I started throwing up. So they took me to the Chalk Hospital, and they had to pump out the medication through my arm. So they had to open up a little part of my arm, and they had to pump the medication out. And that happened when I was like one as well. So a lot of trauma to my body at birth, um, even before birth, obviously, and the first year of my life. Hmm. So, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, do you think that, well, so first of all, when you were talking about how, when you would go into the car, you would start crying.
Yeah.
There is this book that I read actually, like when I first had my cancer diagnosis, called Biology of Belief by Dr.
Oh,
Bruce Lipton. I don't know if you've heard of him.
no, I don't think I have.
Okay, so he's really into epigenetics and just how like
Oh,
your
okay.
environment can change your genes.
Hmm.
And I remember he talked about how when you're in the womb, like the baby is still taking in and can hear
Yeah.
everything and can feel everything, and it's just like absorbing all of the
Hmm.
programming that's going on around it. And so I just feel like that's obviously just proof right there that,
Hmm.
it affects you, and sometimes
Hmm.
people think that like before you're born, like you're just like not conscious and like you won't know what's
Hmm.
going on, but there is a consciousness, I think, to the womb, and that's like what I've learned from the mushroom journey. And
Yes.
obviously these things stick with us.
Yeah.
And but I guess, my point that I'm realizing now is like it doesn't have to stick
Yeah.
with us, and we can do healing
Yeah.
for it. And I'm
Yes.
just curious, in your practice of
Hmm.
therapy and healing, like do a lot of people remember their birth story or like anything like that when they're little?
No, they don't remember it. But when we start to do body work, they start to remember certain parts or they start to get curious about stuff, or certain physical sensations. And I feel like when you start to work with the body, things can unravel.
Right. Because, like, I
Mm-hmm.
feel like, yeah, the body always remembers, and
Mm-hmm.
that's why I think it is so important to do this kind of work that we do, because maybe you logically don't remember it, but like your body is still holding on to things. And I'm just
Yeah.
curious, like, I feel like maybe you think the same way, but it's like you don't realize all the different patterns and
Yeah.
different things that you're doing in your life that maybe stem from something that,
Mm-hmm.
you just don't remember.
Yes. And this can go really deep because I started to even realize my anxious attachment with like my mom and going into like my mother wounds. And a lot of that, I've been uncovering it through my own healing journey and multiple ways of healing, not just going to therapy myself as a therapist, but doing energy work, doing breath work, right? I always talk about that there isn't one way of healing, because we're not also like this human that it's just a one way and that's it, right? Um, it we're layers. There's so many, like we're literally an onion and we got to peel those layers, right? So those layers, sometimes it's a different healing modality. So throughout the years, and it's ongoing, it's a lifetime, and I've been doing a lot of my healing work since my early 20s. And it's continuing to get curious about those parts that are coming up, and noticing if there's themes, right? And what are those themes? And getting the support with the right people that you feel safe with too.
Right. And I know
Mm-hmm.
that, like, I've read books on attachment styles, and I know that a
Mm-hmm.
lot of times they say that it stems from our parents, like, were they there for
Mm-hmm.
us and were they not, and all of that. But now I'm almost thinking maybe if someone has a certain attachment style and they're trying to heal it or work through it, maybe
Yeah.
they should, if their, mom is still around or their parents are still around, maybe they can ask them, like, hey, did anything
Yeah.
traumatic that you can remember happen, like maybe while you were pregnant with me, or maybe like as I was being born?
Yeah.
Do you think that that would be something that could be helpful for healing that?
Yes. I think really being able to ask questions like those, right? Um, about the dynamic at home, their environment, their stress levels, if obviously the parents are together or not, what were the stressors that mom went through during the pregnancy, before and after. I feel like those are all factors that play into our story, um, and subconsciously is there. And also even talking about like your grandmother, because it's intergenerational, right? And it's important to know even about your grandmother, because you were in the wound of her too.
Right. No, I'm so
Uh-huh.
glad you mentioned that because in the
Yeah.
mushroom journey that I did, my mom was adopted.
Mm-hmm.
And they told me in the journey that because she was adopted, she had an abandonment
Mm-hmm.
wound, and that got like projected and absorbed onto me. So it's like I had this abandonment wound, but like it wasn't even from me being abandoned. It was from
It was
her.
hers. It was
Yeah.
hers. Yeah.
Right. So that's so important, like you're
Mm-hmm.
saying, to definitely, if like anyone in your family is around still, like definitely
Yes.
try to connect with them and ask that.
Yes. And I always tell clients, this is not yours. Sometimes it's not even ours, right? But we are the change maker. We are the cycle breaker, and we are the one that gets to gets to feel it,
Right. Lucky
gets
us.
to gets to feel it a little deeper, and obviously allow it so that it can stop with you, right?
Right.
So it can end with you. Um, but yes, being able to get curious about your mother's history and your grandmother's history to the extent and the accessibility that you might have or not as well. And sometimes you're not able to ask those questions, but being able to just allow the body to surrender. And I feel like when you really allow the body to, like, for you to listen to your body, you'll get some answers with it.
Right. I think that's important.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Because I'm trying to think like, what if someone can't ask? Then maybe to do some
Yeah.
somatic work and maybe just like take some deep breaths, get
Mm-hmm.
quiet, try to tap into your intuition, or just ask yourself, like, where is this coming from? And I feel like the
Yeah.
more, and like maybe you have like certain exercises you recommend, but I feel like the
Yeah.
more we can try to do these things, like if you can't have access to your family anymore, the more
Yeah.
you'll hear the answers.
Yes. And when you do just sit in these feelings, whatever those emotions are, being able to not criticize them or judge them, but just wander, allowing them to happen. And sometimes getting ourselves out of the head and trying to make sense of things is a blockage and it's a barrier. But just simply allowing whatever needs to go through you, whatever needs to be um, felt, and also give the attention of the sensation and whatever physical sensation it is, letting it be there. But it's harder, like it's really hard because it can feel very deep. And when you're in it, and it's so difficult. So that's why it's important to not do it alone sometimes, to have someone with you as either like a provider, right? Whatever modality is it that you're trying out.
Definitely. And I love how you have like the two sides of like the therapy background and the
Mm-hmm.
energy because I do feel like it's the logical mixed with the emotional.
Yeah.
And I mean, I know you could do emotional stuff too with
Yeah.
therapy, but I mean, so from your
Yeah.
experience though, since you do both, like, do you feel
Yeah.
like a lot of times when people have this trauma, some like maybe it's more emotional or more like somatic
Yeah.
than it is logical?
Yeah, so I also do the type of therapy that's called EMDR, and it does a lot mind body connection. And there's times in sessions where I just guide them to tap into whatever emotion they're feeling in their body as they're either tapping or they're following a certain eye movement back and forth, which activates the right and the left side of your brain, which is the logical and the emotional side, right? So when I am implementing this type of modality in sessions, and the client is really, like, really allows themselves for me to guide them through it, and also has this trusting and this therapeutic relationship where it feels very safe already. It's been developed, right? Because that's just foundational as well. And there's times where I get clients afterwards, towards the end of the session, where it's like, how did that just even happen? Like, was that like was that magic, right? Because sometimes it can feel very magical.
Right.
Um, right? And there's times that they are like very surprised, obviously, but then I'm like, you did all the work. You just allowed me to guide you, and you allowed me um to witness that, to be witnessed is a big thing too, because there's a level of judgment and shame and vulnerability, all that together, that sometimes it's hard to be there, right? The vulnerability part, and to be witnessed by someone.
I love how you said that, like, the person is the one who did it, because,
Hmm.
I love empowering people and to just like have
Yeah,
them know that like they can heal themselves, and obviously like with help, like with facilitators like us.
yeah,
But I think that the modalities like you're using, like EMDR,
yeah,
tapping, and then even with the mushrooms, it's not that like they're healing us or like we're healing someone. It's more that I think that it's just letting the resistance down in our
yeah.
energy field, where then we can finally connect and do the
Hmm.
healing ourselves.
Yes, right? Because you're doing it all. There is a level of feeling safe with the person as well, right? So
Yeah.
for me, obviously, a lot going back to even the story of like the wound and that, I think we talked about this outside of the podcast once, like that was my first home, right? And that was hit. And it was a big trauma to my first home. So I never felt safe. Never felt safe in my body. So that's always been like a common thing for me, and a pattern, right? Getting curious about patterns and not feeling safe in my body. So going back to just body work is super important. And that's when a lot of the layers come too. There's a different layer to that. So when I started doing a lot of body work is just really giving a lot of safety to my body first as an adult now, even to the part of that little baby in the wound of my mom, and carrying her in my body and letting her know that she is safe now. So that safety has been ongoing and really
Yeah.
reassuring it. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's like a practice. It's not just like one and
Mm-hmm.
done.
Mm-mm. It's ongoing.
So what about like can we talk about maybe some themes that people can think of in case they're listening and they're like, well, because I'm all about like reverse engineering sometimes. Like if you don't know what it is and you can't
Yeah.
pinpoint it, it's like maybe we can look at some patterns, and then that can maybe tell us if maybe we do have something that happened in like the womb or some from early childhood. And so I know, like you were saying, when you were hit in the womb, like that
Yeah.
didn't make you feel safe in your body. And with me,
Mm-hmm.
when I found out from the mushroom journey that when I was a C-section baby, that didn't make me feel safe at home or in life. And I move all the time, and
Mm.
I always feel like I just don't feel safe. Well, now it's been better since the journey, but up to
Yeah.
then, for 37 years, I was not feeling safe. And
Yeah.
so, but those are things that I wouldn't have even thought that
Yes.
that's where it was from. And so
Mm-hmm.
since you said you like patterns, so do I. Like, are there any, so I guess like trusting, not feeling safe in the world, maybe not feeling safe in your body. Are there any other like major themes that you think people can try to identify?
Not feeling safe with a partner. I think not feeling safe with someone else, right?
Mm,
I always say, and I had heard this from one of the body workers that I work with, the first relationship we ever have is with our mother. That is foundational to all relationships. And if my relationship with my mother started very rocky and very anxious, that was the foundation, and that's what I was attracting.
right.
Right? So that attachment style was a that's what I was attracting, and it was like mimicking a lot of those feelings. And I didn't realize it until recently, where I was like, okay, there's something here. There's a pattern. Now I'm the common denominator, right? So
Yeah.
I was like, all right, there's something that I need to dig deeper with, and yeah, I started to realize that I wasn't truly feeling safe with these past partners. And what kept me there was because that's all I knew from a foundation of my nervous system being
Right.
hit, right? Um, so because I've been doing a lot of uh, nervous system regulation and listening to my body and just really understanding my body cues and what is it that it's telling me, my intuition, things like that. Like really paying attention and noticing, right? That I started to, even when I go on dates, like, how is my body feeling? Am I anxious? Am I feeling safe right now? Um, and paying attention to that because I didn't before, and
Mm-hmm.
now I do. So yeah, get curious about the partners that you're attracting.
Yeah, no, I love so much that you said the thing about your relationship with your mom because I mean, I realized it's the same thing after my mushroom journey because I didn't feel safe, obviously, in the world, and
Yeah.
I was like picking people. And I also felt like in the journey they showed me, I felt like my mom didn't show up for me since I
Yeah.
felt like alone. And so a
Mm-hmm.
lot of like a pattern with me is I'll feel like partners don't show up for me.
Yep.
But what I'm curious about your opinion is I feel like growing up, I was always taught
Yeah.
or I don't know like from who specifically, but I feel like they always say, you know, like however your dad is could be more linked to the partner you're picking.
That
And but
too.
I
There's a part to that.
so yeah, and I'm not saying that that's not it, but I feel like that was so like I felt
Hmm.
like that was it. Like it had to be this had to be something about me and my dad the whole time. That's what I was thinking. And then I'm like, "Oh my God, I had no idea it was my mom." Which like makes so much sense, but
Hmm.
so I guess like what is your opinion on that? Cuz
Yeah.
like I know it still could be like
Hmm.
father stuff, but I know
Hmm.
you're saying that like and I agree like the relationship with your mom is so important because it is your
Hmm.
first relationship.
Yeah. So this is a much current area of my life. It's shifted because I for the last 2 years I've been doing a lot of mother healing, like
Mhm.
mother daughter healing, and just my maternal side. Overall, I feel like 2024 was a lot of that, and even before that. And recently, I do feel like there's been a shift, and that shift now has shifted to my dad. And um, there is parts of traits that my dad has that I also feel like I was attracting from other men, because I would see it in him. And I do feel like it's a combination of both for me. And it has shifted. And I've been doing a lot of, since I had been doing a lot of mother healing, maternal healing, that feminine side healing, even my body and when I talk to my mom, it feels different. It really does. And now I've noticed my interactions and just how I'm showing up and how my body feels and how even my dog feels is a little different with my dad, right? So I'm just kind of paying attention to that too. But yeah, it's a little bit of both. I do feel like it does contribute to both.
Yeah, and I'm sure too. It's like if like it just depends on the person's
Hmm.
family dynamic. Like if their father wasn't even in their life, then like
Hmm.
that might not
Hmm.
even be. I mean, that would probably create another issue, but like not
Hmm.
specifically that's that one. And I also just want to tie in how just for people so that they don't just to have like a different perspective
Yeah.
with the spiritual work that I do, and I know like you do this too, there are bigger soul purposes and contracts at play. And so a lot of times, like I know family is probably like the two, like our parents, or if you have siblings, like they're probably the most triggering people in your life. But just know that the people who trigger you the most, like they are here to help you grow the most and to help you heal the most. And sometimes, you know, it's hard for people to see that when they're in it. But I know from the work that I do, and like I've even had to experience this firsthand, it's like there is a bigger picture. And
Yeah.
instead of like being mad at your parent,
Yeah.
just maybe like flipping the perspective to like, thank you for
Yeah.
letting me have this ability to like regain my power or to
Hmm.
heal XYZ.
Yeah. Hmm. Yeah, definitely. The fact that you said thank you, right? And like being in gratitude, that can be hard. Part of my healing last year was to, I don't know if you've ever heard of this prayer, like thank you, I love you, or I'm sorry. This,
Yeah, the hope.
um,
Oh no. Oh no. Yeah.
uh-huh,
Yeah.
uh-huh,
Hmm.
yeah. So what I would picture is my mom and say that a couple times, like I'm sorry, thank you, and I love you. I'm not sure if that's the right flow of it, but it's obviously those are the words. Um, and that really is powerful. It really is, to practice it, to do, and it's been part of my journey.
Yeah. I love
Hmm.
that.
Hmm. Yeah.
So, other than the not feeling safe in your body and like maybe with
Yeah.
partners, is there anything else that you think was like a huge theme that stemmed
Mm,
from that womb trauma?
trying to think. I mean, my relationship with my mother in general, just mother wounding. Um, I've done some work with that, and I feel like that part is very significant, obviously. Nervous system, just overall understanding my nervous system and constantly either being on fight, freeze, or flight response. Um, and I'm trying to think if there's any other areas, even professionally or career wise. Um, I do feel that because those two major um, events in my life, right? Even before birth and then at 1 years old and still being here, I do feel like I have a purpose in this life to give to others. And I do feel that my my calling and what I do for a living, it's bigger than me. And being part of being a therapist or just obviously holding space for others and telling my story, obviously, um, is just a bigger purpose than me that I'm here for. So yeah.
Yeah, I believe that.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like with my healing with the womb stuff and with
Yeah.
the mother wound and all of that, I mean, I've obviously been on my own spiritual path and I've had like my own healing and spiritual practices, but it wasn't until the mushroom journey that I really was able to see where that came from and to
Mm-hmm.
heal that. And I know that you didn't do mushroom journey, so I'm just wondering if you could
Mm-hmm.
share like what modalities really helped you clear this
Yeah.
womb trauma and stuff with your mom.
Yeah. So breath work really gets me into my body. So I do breath work, and I feel like when I first did breath work, I was like, what is this? Um, my body hasn't responded this way. So it's a very specific type of breathing, and um, that helps just me really get into my body more. So breath work, I do feel like EMDR also has helped me somatically understand where I feel it in the body because that is a common question that the therapist does ask you, like where do you feel this in your body when you're implemented when you implement EMDR and that type of modality. Also, just doing a lot of somatic work. Also doing Reiki, the energy work, and I do also chakra work with regards to the root chakra. So that is our first chakra, and that has to do with safety. So the safety and security. So that is a lot of what I also focus on.
I love that. Yeah, and I
Hmm.
think that for anyone listening or watching who is type A, like me and like you, you a little bit, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And who we tend to get caught up in our mind a lot and are very
yeah.
much in our logic. I think like somatic work and breath work
Hmm.
has been like a saving grace, and that is like one thing that will, no matter what, kind of like get you out of the logic and into your body.
Hmm.
And I have never been really like an emotional person. And, in my mushroom journey, I was like crying
Yeah,
the entire time, but it was
yeah,
because I needed to have that release.
yeah.
And now that you're talking about breath work, it's making me realize too that I do love breath work. I don't do it as often as I want
Hmm.
to, but and I haven't done it in a long time, but every time I used to do it, I would just be like hysterically crying.
Hmm.
And now, and I felt good afterwards, but now I'm seeing that that's because I obviously needed that to be released and it was helping me
Hmm.
do so.
Yeah.
And I think the mushroom journey just made me have like allowed me to do that on a bigger scale. But that just again like for people who they're not sure like how to get out of their logical mind, and even if it's not to heal something crazy, like maybe you're just really stressed out, like breath work is just something and somatic work is just something that could really help you just make a shift, just like that.
Hmm. Yeah, somatic work definitely gets you in your body to notice, to bring more safety in your body and understanding how tense your body is too without even noticing it. Because you can go to talk therapy, but talk therapy and logic could only get you so far. And Yeah,
Trust me, I would know because I'm like too much in the logic in the past, and like, yeah, that really does only get you so far.
it does. It only gets you so far where you have to integrate more of the bottom up approach, the body up to the mind, to the head approach versus top bottom, right?
Mhm.
So I do a lot of the mind body connection because there's obviously still narratives, and where are those narratives coming from? Then there's core beliefs, right? And desensitizing a lot of those core beliefs so that you can feel more safe within your body. Mhm.
And when I had posted on TikTok specifically about my mushroom journey, it went
Yeah,
viral, and most of the questions that people asked
yeah.
me that I want to ask you what your opinion is.
What is it? Yeah.
It was all of these mothers asking me now if they like ruined their child's life from having a C-section or from having a traumatic birth.
Mm,
And so I was trying to just write back quickly saying, like, this was just my experience. And like, just because it happened to you doesn't mean you have like the same experience. But I guess, like, what would you, and obviously we don't know for sure because we're not that person, but I
yeah.
guess just so that people aren't taking this on, I guess just like, what could someone do if they, do feel that
Mhm.
way? Or if they're like paranoid or worried about it?
Yeah. Well, obviously, with any parent, it's important that, and if they're little still, that there's a level of their own self-regulation that, and their own work that needs to happen, right? Before they also have the child do any type of uh, what is it, modalities.
Yeah.
But I think starting with them first, starting with the parent, starting with the mother, and getting their own support is important first. I would recommend that because there's a lot coming up for them, and it can be guilt, right? It can be anxiety, um, because there's life experiences and birth experiences, obviously, that sometimes it's out of our control, right? And that's part like that we have to surrender, and that's part of just life in general. I feel like even with healing, we have to surrender to go a little deeper of what's underneath the core of what's happening, or what is it that we're trying to attract to. But I would just always recommend to start with them first. Start with them getting their own healing, their own therapy, their own type of modality, whatever is it that's calling them, and go from there 1st. Hmm.
Yeah, because something that I've actually experienced just from the work that I do with different clients, what I've
Yeah,
found out from Spirit is that, since I don't have my own kids, is that
yeah, yeah.
kids are always picking up on the
Hmm.
parents' emotions, like, even if
Yeah,
they're really young, and even more so
hmm,
when they're young because you're just so open.
yeah,
And so a lot of times, for example, like, I'll have clients that want to get a divorce, but they're like, no, but I want to stay because of for the kids. And I'm like, I mean, this is even in my opinion, this is what Spirit says. Spirit says that
yeah,
you're actually making it worse by staying
yeah,
because they know what's going on, and you're just like instilling all of the stress you're having and all of the
yeah,
bad patterning and all of these things. And so it's actually better to like not stay. And so I
yeah,
feel like that's kind of aligning with maybe what you're saying is like, if
yeah.
you feel any guilt or any of
Hmm.
those things, like, work on yourself first because it's going
Hmm.
to bleed over into
Yes,
your kids.
correct. Yes. So I would say exactly that, to have the parent, the mother, get her own support. And it starts with them. It starts with them. Hmm. Because some kids, as they're little, they are very resilient as well. Um, I think maybe if my mom, going back to like, based on what my mom knew, she did, right? She didn't know any better. But if, let's say I had a similar like her, I would get my child help as soon as I can, but also get myself help. Um, it's really important to have both at the same time when an adolescent or a kid, a child is getting therapy, there's so much that we do with parents as well because they are obviously that role model. They're demonstrating. those emotions, and it needs to be consistent as well. So start with them.
I love that. And
Hmm.
that's, I feel like,
Hmm.
symbolic for everything in life is like everything starts with you. So it's like,
Hmm.
unless, until you fill up your own cup and do your own healing, that's
Yeah.
when, the rest of it can fall into place.
Hmm. Totally. And the fact that it is okay to have all those feelings, really acknowledging and identifying the feelings and validating that your birth story wasn't what you thought it was going to be and what you had planned, right? And what can you do now,
Right.
to heal that part of you?
Right. And
Hmm.
also too, like when you were saying with guilt and stuff, like to not necessarily take it on, because one of the other comments that I got, it was only from one person, but someone
Yeah.
commented like, "Oh, not everything is your mom's fault," and I was like, I never said it was her fault. Like I wasn't blaming her.
Yeah.
Like it is what it is. Like
Yeah.
that experience happened, but like no one, I was never blaming anyone.
Yes, right. Like my mom as well. She didn't plan, or it wasn't her fault
Right.
to have this car accident, right? Life experiences happen in our life that we can't control. But what can we do after that is our choice. Are
Exactly.
are we going to allow this to define me? What do I have control over? What can I do? Um, so whatever you're not changing, you're choosing.
Yes, I love that. Because
Mm,
yeah, I always say that like I don't resonate with victim mentality. And so what you're
yeah,
saying, I just love so much because it's like, yeah, no matter what happens with us, it's like it doesn't have to identify you, like you just said, and like it's up to you to change it.
exactly. Yeah. So, mhm.
So are there any, like, maybe we can give people some, like, 5 steps or 3 steps or something to for a
Yeah.
little takeaway? Like, I guess what are like maybe 3 things that people can do right now if they are feeling like maybe they have some sort of trauma from when they were younger and they're feeling like really stressed about it and really panicked, or just like any resources?
Yeah, I would definitely write it out,
Okay.
journal about it, I would say, because it can be very overwhelming, right? And uh, there's things that our brain and our body will block because it's too painful. And when it comes in the moment, write it out. And as you're writing, allow those tears to come forward too, that it's okay. And you might not have all the information, and that is okay too. Part of trauma is that you will only know little snippets at first, and then sometimes other information will come later as well as you start to reprocess whatever trauma from the past. And I would say, whatever point of where you're at and what you have, whatever information, write it out.
Okay. And then what do they do after? What's the next step?
I would say, once you write it out, if you are interested to receive any type of service with support, with any type of modality, I would say do some research on what is it that you want to try, what is it that you're curious about. Either do a consultation call with this provider, with this facilitator, with this therapist, whoever it is. And as you obviously know a little bit more about your own research on this modality, is doing that connection call and consultation call to see if that provider, that healer, facilitator is the right fit for you. So look into something that is a good fit for you in the moment of whatever season of life you're at. So that would be step two. Yeah. Step three, I would say, once you're in that service, whatever that modality is to trust.
Yes.
Trust the process. It's easier said than done, though. Trust. So that's number three.
I love that.
And know that once you're in it and you started something, it's going to get worse before it gets better.
Amen to that.
It does get worse before it gets better. So don't lose hope. And the fourth would be reaching out to your support system. because when things get worse before they get better, you need a support system.
Mm-hmm.
Who are your people? Identify those, reach out to them, let them know to whatever extent is it that you want them to know of what's happening. Because you can feel very alone when you're doing heavy work,
Absolutely.
heavy, heavy emotional work. So having a support system. And then the last would be give yourself a lot of credit for even saying yes to yourself to do this type of work. Give yourself a lot of affirmations. Love yourself in the process and the highs and the lows. Because again, it starts with you.
I love that so much. And I know
Mm-hmm.
it's going to help so many people.
Mm-hmm. Yay.
And can I put your information in the show
Yeah.
notes so that people
Yeah.
could book sessions with you or
Yes.
consultations and all of
Of
the
course.
trauma healing and energy healing?
Yes. All the above. Yes. They can
Yes.
do a connection call with me, a consultation call with me. They can reach out to me, my website, my social medias as well. My website is amartherapy.com. I am on Instagram and TikTok as Amar Therapy, and also Amarte period community on Instagram.
Okay. Yeah, and I'll write
Yeah.
everything down so people can click on it as well.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for joining me
Oh,
today. I just feel like this is such an important topic, and
yeah.
I just thought it was such a interesting synchronicity that you had gone through this something similar as well. And so,
Yeah.
I'm like, we have to share this with everyone. And I think the work
Yeah.
you do is so important and so needed. So, I really hope
Yeah.
that anyone listening goes to you if you have like any trauma or need any healing whatsoever.
Yes. Please reach out to me. You're not alone. There's help out there for you.
Yes,
Hmm.
of course. And I know from
Yeah.
experience that it's definitely so much easier and better to have, even if it's just one other person supporting you, like
Yep.
it really makes all like the world of difference.
Yes, it does. It's super, super important to have that support system and um, that group of people. I mean, it doesn't have to be a group. It can just be that one person, like you said.
Right.
Hmm.
Okay. Well, thank you.
You're
And thank you
welcome.
guys for listening. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me or Viri. And I
Hmm.
will again put her information below. And I will talk to you guys soon.
Thank you. Bye.